And I'll ask that out of respect for our presenters, just remain muted until you're called on during the Q&A time within the meeting. Also, please note that I did turn on captions for this meeting, so you can access those at the bottom of the screen. Today's presenters responded to a national call that asked artists to think three-dimensionally and propose a sculptural design that would physically transform an existing bus structure in Winston-Salem. From a great pool of artists, our selection committee chose Ari Glass, Eric Lynn, and Florine Demosthene as the finalists for the Thurmond Street bus shelter. The committee was particularly excited by these artists as each person had thoughtfully considered the site of the bus shelter. Knowing that this shelter is in the heart of the Boston-Thurmond neighborhood, it was important for the committee that the designs considered the history and culture of the area. So for tonight's meeting, each artist will have 10 minutes to present with 5 minutes for a Q&A from the audience. And I'll be moderating the Q&A, so just either post your questions in the chat or just raise your hand and I'll call on you. And then at the end of today's meeting, I'm going to provide a survey link so that you can provide your feedback and inform the committee on who you would select. If you're having any technical issues, just send me a direct message in the chat. And one kind of big thing is that we are, unfortunately, Florine couldn't make it to the meeting, and our tech warm-up, she got booted off because her power went out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm sure winter weather is affecting everyone. So tonight it's going to be Ari and Eric presenting, and I will show Florine's presentation, but unfortunately I can't do the same justice to her work that she would have. Anyway, so to kick it off, we're going to start with Ari. Ari Glass lives in Seattle, Washington. He's a painter and designer whose work reveals personal narratives inspired by historical and fictional concepts of sovereignty. He has public projects throughout Seattle, Washington, to include various large-scale murals and a site-specific sculpture installation. So Ari, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you, Erica, and peace and blessings to everybody. I'm excited to present this today. Yeah, this is a project that I'm highly interested into because it marks an innovation for my work, an elevation, a possibility of elevation to work in 3 dimensions. I work mostly as a muralist, but I have ambitions to do public projects around the world that work in 3 dimensions and work in spaces and architecture and things like this. So I'm very appreciative of this opportunity. Let me share my screen so we can get into it. I'll try not to take too much time. Okay, let's see. Can everybody see my screen now? It's good. Okay. So, you might have seen this before, but the proposal is based on Sam the Dot Man McMillan's personal style. To be honest, before this project, I hadn't been familiar with his work. But as soon as I seen it, I had like a sense of familiarity with him. Like I don't know, like he was like a member of my family or something. Like, oh, I can see how his style, his like, how he paints, how he looks, how fresh he is. Like, oh yeah, I know that like it's a familiar connection. And I wanted to emphasize that hat with this proposal, that hand painted hat, um, and take that and bring it into a architectural element. So it would be a steel constructed hat with taking basically the frame of the pre-existing structure and working around it, building around it with hand painted steel that's molded using CAD that's taken to the fabricator to be molded into these shapes. That is a really unique structure, something that would serve as a landmark and something that, you don't see everywhere. So I wanted to do that. I can combine these new skills of 3D modeling with I already uh, am a painter, so hand painting it would uh, be highly feasible. And the only challenge for me right now is uh, making the proper mold that I can send to the fabricator to get done. So that's being 100% honest, it's a learning process that I'm doing right now. Um, I know one of the questions earlier was a view from the inside, and just showing some of my past work so you can see uh, that I work as a painter, and do some large scale murals as well, and some 3D ceramic work as well, but nothing yet to this scale. Um, a view from the inside from one of my earlier concepts would look like this, something that is lit on the top, so it always shines, and that would be lit with LED lighting. And just to, I also want to present, um, based on feasibility, right? Uh, and taking that concept of the lighting, something that can shine, I wanted to also present another alternative, if I may, um, which would also be highly feasible because this is a painted structure, and this will be done with laser cut steel panels. So the panels that you see, it's taking the original structure of the bus shelter, but removing the side mesh panels and replacing it with hand painted laser cut panels. And these would, of course, reflect Sam the Dot Man McMillan's, iconic style, but in a way, taking it and elevating it to a different dimension, but still keeping in mind his style of like taking, cabinets or items and really transmuting them into his own universe. So taking that same uh, ethos and presenting it for the bus shelter. Uh, and taking these panels and also having the option to line the circles with LED lighting could have a interesting effect where in the daytime there's daylight shining and obviously you can view through it, and at night you can view through it and it has this radiant effect, this glow that casts a light that's a beacon. This is the inspiration for the colorway that we can see, like in the self-portrait, the primary colors are reflected. And then for the framing, like the blue is the same framing that he would often use, like you can see on the right side, the framing of the pictures of the paintings. And just to walk through the fabrication, showing what from the studies and the research that I've done so far, I can take you guys on a journey of how I've been understanding the fabrication and installation, whether it be for this one or for the original, is that I would be taking measurements of the pre-existing structure to create the new playful, innovative structure using 14 gauge steel for the durability uh, of the structure, and shaping that with CAD, the 3D model that's presented to the metal fabricator. And they are able to make the laser cuts and making sure that it's obviously uh, durable, long lasting, and also not doing too much to impact the environment and using harmful things. Want to be like careful with the materials so nothing is wasted. For this alternative projects, could use small circles for perforation that's laser cut. I do have some experience working on a project with laser cut panels as well. Um, and using the LED stripping lighting strips would light it up at night. Kind of had the effect of like a street light, a street lamp that when it goes dark, then those lights turn on. Uh, for the installation, the pre-existing side panels of the original structure will be removed. The new panels would be installed into the structure. Obviously test the circuitry for the LED lighting, and then hand painting the pre-existing what's remaining of the pre-existing frame to match the iconic style of Sam the Dot Man McMillan. And altogether, this project I feel will protect and honor Sam's legacy. It's an amazing legacy, something that needs to be celebrated. Like I was saying in Seattle, I wasn't aware, and I think everybody's got to know. Everybody's got to see it. Everybody's got to check it out. So we have to make this landmark so people, not only nationally but internationally, are aware of Sam's work, his style, that can serve as an inspiration to everybody. Because when I see his work, it's something that is multi-generational, right? Like you could love it as a kid, you can love it as a quote unquote adult professional artist. You could appreciate it as someone who's retired. It serves as a beacon of hope and inspiration to everybody, and that inspiration causes a pause. So while we're on our day-to-day things, when we get that spark of inspiration, it gives us a chance to pause, a chance to reflect, and a chance to really access our inner imagination, our inner creative ability, and yeah, give hope to artists and everyone that's uh, you know, around our community and galvanize communities. So thank you. That's my presentation. I would love to hear any questions about the original concept or the new concept, and I hope that I can do my best to answer them. Thank you. Thank you. Oh
Great.
yeah, to keep
Thanks so
this
much.
screen on. I should keep this screen on. Yeah.
Either way, yeah, up to you.
Okay.
So anybody, if they want to just kind of raise their hand or put any questions into the chat, I'm happy to moderate. David.
All right, first of all, I would like to thank you for your presentation and everything. And on your original concept, um, I assume that's the fedora that you were trying to duplicate that Sam the Dot Man was wearing, right?
Correct. Correct. Yeah, the iconic fedora.
Yeah. Okay. Far as the extension, the legs that's extending down from the fedora, and how is that going to work, on the existing shelter?
My idea is that it's going to be sculpted and wrap around the original structure. I think that it can be made in two pieces, then welded together. Because I wanted to make something that's different from the original structure, something that's a bit more, you could say, funky. When I designed it, I wanted to take inspiration from kind of like the legs of a table. Because I would see that Sam would paint objects like yeah, tables, desk, chairs, uh, and incorporate that and put those two elements together, something that it's almost like you wouldn't expect it, but it's completely in line with his the things that he makes. Something that is like something you wouldn't expect, but he turns it into a beautiful creation.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one more.
Okay, go for it, David.
One more. On your new concept, okay?
Yes.
I heard you say you were planning on removing the existing panels and replacing it with some laser cut, steel panels. Am I correct?
That's right.
Okay. Now, in the laser cut steel panels, the holes that you're putting in there are much larger than the current holes that's already there, right?
Mhm.
Now, did you factor in since this is a shelter, did you factor in the weather conditions and things of that nature? I mean, because sometimes we know that the wind blows and the rain blows, the snow blows, and so
Yeah.
why would you
Yeah.
want to put larger holes there? Why can't you use the existing panels?
Well, I wanted to make something that's, I think the holes can be adjusted, maybe to like you're saying, they're quite large right now, and they can be adjusted to maybe something. I was looking if I had a coin, like a dime-sized hole,
Yeah.
something that's more minimal, but still has that same visual impact. Right now, the current structure is like a mesh from what I gathered and what I seen. Um, but mesh, I don't think it would fit well for Sam's style. He needs the dots, he needs the circles. So using the steel panel and creating these circles, it's like a way of still conveying that same message, but executing it in laser cut steel. Um, which I think is a really cool almost juxtaposition of using this material and using um, laser cut, using a computer thing to emulate something that's very much hand drawn, very much analog, but combining those two principles, I think always it has a very good chance of becoming something that's really innovative and something that a lot of people haven't experienced or seen before, especially with the painting on top of it. So it's like taking that the essence of Sam's style and translating it to 2024, or beyond, like a more futuristic approach on something that's very much rooted, to the earth, to the soil in a way. I hope that answers it.
That's
And
great.
one
Oh,
more
okay.
one more
Yes,
question.
please.
As far as the wiring for the lighting, how would you handle that since there's no existing wiring there?
Well, from what I gather, again, I'm not electrician, but from what I gather, you can have a small box on the back of it, a waterproof box, that can be adjusted for maintenance. And you would wire the LEDs in the openings, the perforations. Um, I think it would also depend how big the perforations are to fit lighting in it, or you can have two panels that are sandwiched with lighting in the middle. And then there's a small box that would be on the back of the shelter that you can replace the the wiring if need to, or the battery to make sure that it's running properly. Um, and that's something that's not essential, it's not necessary, but I think it would add a whole nother element using lighting on this shelter that gives it a additional pop. So it has two lives in a one in the sunlight and one at dusk or at night. During the day, I can see some amazing shadows being cast with the dots through the perforations through the sunlight. And then at night, obviously, just like a glowing effect that also can produce some really amazing effects. So yeah, I think a small electrical box that's waterproof on the back can be adjusted for the electricity from my
I got,
research.
Thank you.
thanks, sir. I got a few questions in the chat. Back to the hat structure, just how would passengers be protected from rain or snow in that one if things were coming in from the sides?
Yeah, that one, if things are coming from the sides, there could be a possibility of adding maybe a laser cut panels to the sides. You know, that's a possibility. I know that, yeah, sometimes there's a compromise, right? It's like for the form and the function. Even looking at some of the proposals that were recommended when first applying for this project, some of them were wide open, some of them were partially closed. It's kind of like a trade-off that needs to be assessed. So that is a valid point. It would be in its current state more open to the elements as opposed to the other one that has a screen. But I would be open to working with that because I know it's cold out here. And I
Yeah.
know that wind chill is no joke.
And just another question, I think this actually applies to both. Would the paint fade at all in the sun?
I don't anticipate it fading. I haven't done a project with painted steel before, but there's a lot of other examples of painted steel that have lasted a long time. If you think about the works of someone like Alexander Calder, he does a lot of outdoor structures that are made out of painted steel, vibrant painted steel that were installed. I want to say, well, he's had a long career, but some of them were, you know, there's some in Seattle that have been there since as long as I can remember, at least the 80s, and they still look great to this day.
Very cool. Well, I think that's your time. So thank you so much, Ari. We're going to move on to Eric Lynn. So
Thank you, Vicky.
Eric, yeah. Eric Lynn is a Gulf Coast-based designer, fabricator, and educator that operates a metal-oriented digital fabrication studio named Workhouse. He has a master's of architecture from Tulane University, and his work explores why we live the way we live and how our choices, whether present, manipulated, or subconscious, shape our world. You can find many of his public art projects in New Orleans and Florida. So Eric, take it off.
Awesome. Hi, y'all. Thank you for that introduction, Erica. I'm really excited to be here tonight. I hope everybody's staying warm, or at least warm enough. So Erica covered a good bit about what I do, but I run a digital fabrication metal workshop in New Orleans. So I'm working with a lot of artists and doing some work on my own to produce things that people enjoy. So let me get my screen share going and I can get us on the road. Alrighty, can you all see this? Perfect. Okay, guys, so for the bus shelter at Thurmond Street and Haywood Street, I'm proposing a revised proposal called the Thurmond Street Stroll. And in this presentation, I'm going to walk you all through a couple of the details, how I got to this proposal, what the materials are and the finishes are, and then run through a little bit about the budget and the timeline. And then also finally at the end, show you a little bit about the work that I do and how that starts to relate into how this process can be made a reality. And so I'm calling this project the Thurmond Street Stroll, and that's looking at the architecture and the nature that's around Thurmond Street, since it's this connective tissue in the Boston-Thurmond neighborhood, what that means when you're walking down it and seeing everything and absorbing these things, and how both the architecture and the nature work together and shape the community, and how it's crucial to have these stable ideas of nature and home holding you together, and how that really starts to create a rich community, and then taking some of those icons and putting them into this bus shelter to really create a little icon of the neighborhood. And so this was my original proposal sent in for the RFP initially. This proposal, Into the Wind, was a bit more abstract, but it starts to use some of these same ideas of these folded metal fins to start to create some shade and interest in the bus shelter. And in this case, it was looking at taking a pause from a busy day and just kind of enjoying the whimsy that's around you. But with this revised proposal for the Boston-Thurmond neighborhood, I'm looking a bit more into what it means to be in that community and icons that really mean something for that community. Can y'all see my slides? I'm switching them around. Okay, good. And so then looking at that, this is a side view from the bus stop. So you have these natural elements and these architectural elements playing with each other, creating their own types of collage. And the tree and natural elements start to break the roofline, as do these clouds. So they're starting to soften up those harsher edges. And you can start to go engage with these different fins and see how they overlap and see how the shadows start to have an interplay with each other. And then from the back of the bus shelter, you can see that things start to wrap around fully. So it's really enveloping the bus shelter and kind of elevating it to a different level. And then as for the parts and pieces, I'm looking at the different architectural elements, namely the cottages, the bungalows, and the shotguns, and starting to collage these and layer them. So you kind of get what you'd get walking down the street. You see these different pieces of architecture and pieces of history and places that people have called home for generations, but also interspersed with that, local native trees, so magnolia trees, sweet gum trees, and loblolly pines, and seeing how these start to play as well. And then using clouds to kind of top it all off and give like a soft, fluffier flow to start to dissolve the top edge of the bus shelter. And then going into the installation, I guess maybe David, you might have been the one asking about protection from the shelter in our initial proposal. So I've decided to leave in the aluminum wall panels and leave the bus shelter as is and start to add to that. So with that, I would add on these aluminum channels on the outside that the fins would bolt onto. So the bus shelter is left as is. This starts to act as a skeleton to start to build up and put the fins onto the bus shelter. And then there are also some custom elements at the top that the clouds can bolt onto as well. And so then starting to move up, the fins will be made of mild steel. So that's just the steel that everything around our world is made of. And these will be powder coated. So the different colors are starting to represent different elements found in the neighborhood as well. And these will be bent and folded and have like a little flange on one side, and that's what bolts to the aluminum skeleton. So you start to get a very rigid structure and something that's very cohesive. And these will be bolted onto the aluminum skeleton rail pieces with tamper-proof fasteners. So that'll prevent things getting messed with over time and to make sure it really stays the test of time as well. And so then moving up, the tree panels will be also treated in the same way. These fins will still bolt on to the same aluminum channels that wrap everything. And again, these are also powder coated, similar to like a car. Like those are meant to be durable outdoor finishes. So this starts to be made of elements that can stand the test of time. The aluminum skeleton won't corrode, and the powder coated steel starts to really bind everything together and be robust for outdoor use. And then finally, we've got the clouds going on the top, and these are just bolted through the face of the clouds into the cloud supports above. And then jumping into the timeline, I know with the original RFP, I think there is a target date of having things installed by the end of May, and I think we can target that. I think the things might start to bounce that around a little bit are the community feedback. I'd love to hear what y'all have to say and tweak things as that starts to go forward, but also dealing with the city council and also an engineer if needed to make sure things can be structured correctly. But then moving forward from that, we'd start to purchase and procure the materials. We've got a CNC plasma cutter here at the shop, so I'd be handling as much as I can internally. And so more or less it would be taking the house cutouts and the tree cutouts, sending them to essentially a giant robot and telling it to cut out what you got to cut out. So all of that can happen here. Then they would go get bent. So then you'd have this rigid fin that could start to be bolted onto things. Then they'd go out to the powder coater, get those powder coated and then wrapped up, and then they're ready for install. And that should still be able to be targeted for May, but everything is also flexible. And for the installation itself, I'd be looking at about 4 days on the ground. Could likely do that a bit quicker, but I think I'd want to have time just in case any inclement weather happens, because you never know, but also to stop and chat and interact with people around too, because I don't think it's worth being on the ground for a day, throwing something up and then just getting out of there. I think it's important for people to see and talk about what's happening. And then as for the maintenance, for both short-term and long-term maintenance, there's not a ton of work to do on that end. These materials and these finishes are very robust and meant to be outdoors. Aluminum doesn't corrode, and powder-coated steel is like on our vehicles and other things in our life. It's meant to be outside. So hopefully the county or the transit authority could come by and check and just make sure things are still fastened after about a month or so. And then long-term, if the rain doesn't start to bring the dust down, then maybe getting them hosed down or power washed or something throughout time. But that's also something we can discuss more moving forward as well. And then as for the budget, we don't have to linger on this a ton of time, but I know y'all wanted to take a look at it. The material cost comes out as the highest line item, but that accounts for the mild steel panels, the aluminum channel, and also getting things CNC plasma cut, the tamper-proof fasteners as well, and then the bending and the powder coating as well. And on all my projects, I like to add in a material contingency, because with all of the material prices during COVID, things have been ebbing and flowing month to month, week to week. So I think it's just important to be conservative and mindful of how that extra budget wiggle room kind of plays into things. And then jumping down, you have the labor costs, and that's for my labor for design, fabrication, and installation, and then also for a couple extra hands at the shop as things are being produced, and for the presumable additional insurance that I've had to get for similar projects like this in the past. And then finally, looking at things to facilitate the installation, just lodging costs and getting things up there and making sure they're wrapped well, because I don't want some nice powder coated pieces coming up already scuffed up. So it does come in a bit hair over the initial budget, but I think with some wiggle room, we'd have some flexibility to make things work. And then just a little bit more about myself. As Erica said at the beginning, I have a degree in architecture, so the built environment is a big interest of mine. And I have a good bit of experience doing other fabrication work. And then also I was teaching a sculpture studio at Loyola University here until last semester. So I've had my hands in a lot of different pies, just kind of making things and being part of that community, at least locally. And then a couple quick past projects that I've done to kind of give you a scope of what's possible. The top project is the Lafitte Greenway Gateways. This is for a linear park through New Orleans, and these are supposed to be some beacons. As you're biking down, you can stop and see where you're going and where you've been. And these are meant to be outside. And then below that, the Mr. O'Mao chuck wagons are a little dim sum cart for this local restaurant nearby. They were meant to be a pop of color inside of a usually dimly lit restaurant. So these kind of add that level of interest. And those are also powder coated mild steel. So you start to get that contrast of the pop that can really start to happen. And then on the top here, the Fold and Fire was a product that I worked on and developed, and these are a series of fire pits. So these were sold commercially, and these were meant to be outside and a piece of exterior furniture. And then below that, the hand-in-hand sculptural screens is a project that's still slightly ongoing. I was awarded finalist for that, but they've had some budgetary issues, but we're working through how to move forward with that for a project in Leesburg, Florida. And that was big with community feedback. And this was really where they started to have a hand in the design and conversation process as well. So that's what I have for y'all today. So let me know if you all have any questions or want me to bounce back to any slides.
Could you go to the like kind of opening slide that just gives the best vantage on it?
Absolutely.
And then I do have a question that came in the chat. Just can you talk a little bit more about the sides and the transparency, whether people would be able to see out of them still?
Yeah. So the aluminum panels that are already there, I believe they're already still slightly transparent, at least from what I could gather from what I could get on Google Images. So you'd still be able to see through. It wouldn't maybe necessarily be as impactful, but you'd still get those shadows and that interplay starting to hit the aluminum screens. But it wouldn't be directly visual. It would still be slightly impaired. But it's about, I guess, the shadows coming to the inside, but also still going to the outside as well.
David, go for it.
Eric, how did you select your colors for this particular project?
I kind of just zoomed around Google Street View and kind of picked out a couple of tones that I was seeing around the neighborhood. So I was seeing a lot of like creamy whites, and then also some of the terracotta color coming from some of the bricks, and also some blues as well.
Okay. Well, in our neighborhood, with the Boston Thurmond Community Engagement Roundtable, we have a logo with specific colors.
Okay.
And I was wondering if you could see our logo and see our colors, could that be placed on this particular design?
Yeah, the designs are really flexible. The colors are whatever we tell the powder coater to put on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the colors can all change. So it's just a balance of what you want to be looking at every day.
Right. Like, I don't know if you can see this, but this is our logo here with the various colors that's in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can start to look at what colors are possible that
Right.
certain theme with the neighborhood.
Okay.
Are there any additional questions?
Well, I do want to say, Eric, your original design, I had some serious concerns about it, you know, especially without their panels, and I'm glad that you redesigned it and decided to leave the existing panels and just add to it, you know, and making the 3D concept more defined. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I think like Ari said, there's the definite balance of form and function and how that starts to play into things. Because I think some of the initial precedents that we were provided were very compelling, but it's tough to work with sometimes.
Neat.
Cool. Any other questions?
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, good. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric, so much. All right, so I'm not a presenter typically, so I'm kind of just going to kind of quickly scroll through Florine's presentation that been about the Safe Bus Company. Some of you have already seen it, but for those of you who haven't, let's do this. Okay. So let's get rid of, oh no, I'm sorry. Here we are. Okay. So Florine has experience as a visual artist and then also as a kind of burgeoning public artist. Just a little background about her. She lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma, has a Master of Fine Arts from Hunter College, in New York. So Florine has exhibited extensively through the United States, Caribbean, United Kingdom, Europe, and Africa. So she's received a handful of awards the Art Moves Africa grant and a Joan Mitchell Foundation grant. And her work is on view at the National Museum for African American History and Culture, the University of South Africa, and the Lowe Museum of Art, amongst many other places. Most recently, she started doing public art in Tulsa. She has one piece that's laser etched work on the side of the AHA Museum in Tulsa, and then also a basketball revitalization project. So her presentation really was focusing on the Safe Bus Company that had history in Boston Thurmond and its roots. And so this would be images that are layered, like etched into glass, and then replacing the panels that are currently in the bus shelter. And it was also painting the entire exterior in this gold coating to kind of elevate the existing structure. A lot of her presentation was a lot about the choice of the images. So the back one being a historic image from Safe Bus Company, with its motto, safety and service, lit with an LED light that would be powered by this solar panel on the top of the roof. And then on the side panels, these were images of historic African-American figures in transportation. These were national figures, and so she actually lists many of them here. The first African-American Secretary of Transportation, inventor of the catalytic converter, first African-American car manufacturer, inventor of the traffic signal, first African-American female transportation engineer, and the inventor of the refrigerated truck. And so each one of these images are somewhat transparent, with a 50% transparency, but still visible while you're standing in the shelter. Yep. And so really, these are the images that kind of do justice to her work. I don't know whether she had any updates to the actual thing. I will be reaching out to her to see if I can get a short presentation posted online. And then this is examples of her past work. I know that these kind of not going to do justice to this, but that the etchings on this pretty much had a ink that absorbed sunlight, and so that at night they would pretty much glow in the dark, and they were signatures of people that were represented in the museum, so that it was giving, I think it was actually specifically talking about the Tulsa massacre, so that it was giving light to the names that were names of people lost, and that they would glow at night, giving them kind of a presence and power once again. And then that's the names. And it seems that as people have contributed their own names at the bottom. And this is a basketball revitalization project that she has in the works right now with Tulsa, based off of more of her own visual arts practice. That is visual here. So, kind of going back up to her presentation, I don't know if anybody wants to necessarily ask any questions that I could just pass along to her.
Yes, Erica, on the Safe Bus project, any of the people on there, people from the neighborhood, for instance, people that were instrumental in the first Safe Bus Company?
So that was our request as the selection committee, that she would do in the updates, and that could be potentially something that she would have had for this presentation. So I think that, you know, I will ask her to give us the updated presentation with the hope that there are the faces and names of people from our local community that were part of Safe Bus Company.
Okay.
David?
Is this going to be a painted or a wrap type?
So this was actually going to be etched into the glass. It would be much
Etched
more
into the glass. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And she's planning on placing the glass into the frame structure. So the metal panels will come out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So while it's still protected from like the elements, it's a change in material.
Okay. So is she going to use some type of plexiglass or glass?
This says glass panel.
Okay.
Yeah, and that could be a great question about safety and kind of
Yeah.
long-term.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah. What is the contingency plan in the event of vandalism? That's a great question. I know that this is something that there's certain types of glass that you can buy that can be a little bit more scratch proof, but not really sure with the additional printing whether you can have those coatings without affecting the image. So great questions to ask. Sorry for not being Florine. But I'm going to stop sharing now. And I just want to thank our presenters so much for the time that they took to provide these updated designs and to talk with us as a community. It's just so exciting to see how somebody from outside of Winston-Salem still interprets and understands our history. Sorry, just kind of, I am going to post right now a link to a survey, and I have updated it with images that our presenters provided us. So please take the time to just let us know your thoughts on today's presentations, leave your comments, and we will be taking those into consideration when the selection committee reconvenes. And so to keep up to date on the selection process, just check out the Public Art Commission's webpage. I will also post that. But I also will be making announcements and visiting the Boston Thurmond Town Hall meetings to keep you guys abreast with everything. So once again, thanks for coming. Our next community meeting is actually next Wednesday. So if you're interested in learning about the bus shelters that are on Waughtown and South Main Street, we'll be doing a presentation on, sorry, let me check the date. I'm sorry, next Tuesday, the 23rd at 6 p.m. Check out our website, that link that I provided to find those Zoom links. All right, everyone, I'm gonna stop recording now, and feel free to stay on if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a great night.
Thank you.